UPC didn't attack the Lubiri. In any case, the central government fought with the Lubiri. It was not UPC, but
how did the conflicts come about?
I think the bad blood started with the referendum, actually, in 1964. Because
what was the referendum about?
The referendum was about the lost counties in the conflict between Buganda and Bunyoro, which had been ongoing for a very long time. And up to the Lancaster House discussion over the constitution, the lost county had not been resolved. The matter hadn't been resolved, and it was contentious. And it was decided that this matter be left to the post-independence government, and that it should be settled through a referendum, ideally no later than 2 years after independence. And so once the government was formed in 1962, whoever formed that government was obliged to respect the independence agreement. And the UPC formed that government, and the UPC, could not fall back on the people of Uganda because you want to please a particular group, whoever they are. And Ugandans need to come to terms. We need to learn, and you young people need to be able to know that once in a while you should be able to say no, including to your own conscience.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
What does it mean to be a republic? We are called the Republic of Uganda, right? But what does it mean? And if you read the Common Man's Charter, there is an entire section on republicanism in Uganda. I know you've heard of the party, for example, which hosts the President of the United States. But what does it mean to be a republic? And if I'm to start this off, I just want to read something which was encoded just in that section. We will leave a link for this very document such that you're able to interact with it. It states that the party, and in this case the Uganda People's Congress, has always made it clear to the people that the only acceptable and practical meaning of October 9th, 1962 is that the people of Uganda must move away from the ways and mental attitudes of the colonial past, move away from the hold of tribal and other forms of factionalism and the power of vested interests, and accept that the problems of poverty, development, and nation building are what are crucial and what we should be focusing on as a country. And if we are just to start out on this, what does the concept of republicanism mean, and why did UPC choose to push for a reorganization of the mental infrastructure of the Ugandan people towards what they had become at independence?
I think you sort of partly referred without politicizing it, which makes it better, in the sense that if you're not asking me to define, but you are asking me to express, the contradictions at independence were that the country faced different contradictions around identity, different contradictions around social structure, different contradictions around the economic disparity. As I said, for example, you may wish to know that as at independence, the African Ugandan controlled only 12% of the GDP. The GDP of this country was only 12% African controlled. So is that independence? Absolutely not. But impressively, with the deliberate, coordinated government policies and programs, by independence, 9th October 1965, that's 3 years, that figure has changed to 35%. massively impressive.
That's close to triple of the control over the
It's
economy.
actually just a percentage
What
triple.
had caused that leap?
As I said, it's deliberate, both fiscal and monetary policies, programs, in which you deliberately use both applications to create enabling environments in which you dismantle vested interests, special interest groups, enable the majority, create enabling environments through cooperatives and the financial sector, including opening up, access to finance, credit facilities to farmers, making sure that you know what is the best that the people of Masaka, Budu Masaka do, and what's the best that happens to the people, the people of Teso, and how does government intervene to create, an enabling environment in which they're able to advance the economic well-beings. But
That's an economic miracle. Tripling control
is
by
an absolute economic,
just 3 years.
Absolute economic miracles, and that's official. And then what do you do then? You open up education. You open up. So what do you do? By 1964, that's 1 year prior to that. Universal access to higher education became free. Universal education became free in 1964. But part of the 1964 legislation was that you dismantle this nonsense that only Catholics will go to Namagunga and only Protestants will possibly go to Budo. I would not have gone to my fantastic Miri because it's a Protestant-founded institution.
Yeah, you were Catholic.
Yeah, yes, and only Muslims will go to Chibuli. So this was dismantled by central government. So when you do that, what do? Central government injects resources in terms of infrastructure and takes on and over the leadership, visionary leadership. So the system's done, and then, as I said, education, access to jobs, access to research, access to, these days we call it technology, and building up skills. And as I said, particularly, creating a situation in which then you focus on enabling the indigenous versus equipping self-interest big business. It's atrocious, actually criminal, that a government, an African government in Uganda, would seek to give money to Pineti, would seek to give money to some dubious individual in Atiak, would seek to give money to Rocco Construction. All these are dubious foreigners, and as I asked you earlier in the previous segment, I do not know a case in which the Ugandan government has said that there's some extension of Rashitura land which used to possibly belong to government of Uganda, so you, the people of Karamoja, come and take some 100 acres. I've not heard about it, So you do that in terms of you basically Africanize the deliberate Africanization of the economy.
You make an argument. I come to think of it, the Republican Party that's in the United States is reorganizing their economy to push for America first, the local American first. Is that the same principle on the citizen of the country first and not the foreign interest?
I don't want to compare that because of what the Republican thing with Donald Trump is some kind of ideological madness, and it's actually, in any case, it's a right-wing stuff that I don't know where it goes and where it starts. And in any case, number two, just another disclaimer. Interesting, the Republican political party in America is actually a conservative political party. The political party whose values would be consistent, generally with the UPC, would possibly be the Democrats. Although in America, both parties are sort of narrowed together, close kind of stuff. So usually people contradict that, and sometimes people even think that the Democratic Party of America is necessarily a sister party with the Democratic Party of Uganda. No, those are basically merely...
They can have different...
not can, but they're merely in names, because the Democratic Party of America...
practice may be different,
is nearer to the progressive side of politics than the Republican Party in America. But Republicans per se, as it were, was following the attempts to harmonize the contradictions around feudal systems in terms of kingdoms in Uganda in 1963. This was side by side with the Africanization of politics. In 1963, the government decided that instead of us having a governor general who's a British Queen's appointee in the State House, basically being the super overseer of government, and when our overall leader is an elected prime minister, as is the case in Britain, Israel, Germany, India, to give by example, the few examples, Italy, we want to claim this ownership. Knock off the governor general position and create an office equivalent.
Prime Minister.
No, office of a president. So let's give it an office of a president. The president of 1963 is equivalent to the current president of Germany, the current president of Italy, the current president of Ireland, the current president of India. You don't know those people. They're almost irrelevant.
Ceremonial
names. Yeah, the ceremonial people. But they're important because the symbolic national court leaders, doing the people that sign formal bills and legislation, things like that. But really, the government is led by the elected prime minister. So like in Britain, why Britain, I didn't use it as an example, is the government is led by the prime minister. They make all policy decisions. Now, but the government belongs to the king. But including the statements written that the king reads, they're usually statements written on their behalf by the prime minister or the office of the prime minister. Now, Ugandans and Africans don't get this. And I use that word strongly but deliberately because I think I'm saying it. People need to wake up. So that was the thing. So point is, in that symbolic place of a reasonable parent, courtesy, what do you do? It was decided, and these were UPC ideas, that let the presidents, those symbolic leaders, be our cultural leaders. You see?
I get you. And recently I got to learn that there was like a deputy president who was like a chief of Busoga Kingdom.
And I'll explain to you, Nadiope. Nadiope was actually vice president of UPC. So they've been already political people. He was actually vice president of UPC.
Okay.
So Nadiope wanted to be the first president in 1962. So one thing, we removed the office of governor general, and then replace it with a titular symbolic president. You can call it president or anything else. But in this case,
it's supposed to be occupied by a culture.
No. First of all, you do that. And then number two, you say, who are these people to be able to, who are these national elders who may be over and above politics? People who are much more sensible, father who will, that kind of stuff. That's basically what these positions are. And so you see in, I think I'll use more of even Israel, but the Netanyahu has spoiled politics there. Country like Israel, country like Germany, their presidents tend to be, even if they came from political parties, of course, natural people will have their political affiliation.
Yeah, sure.
They will tend to be people who will have shown ability to be objective, fair, and reasonable nationalists, not petty partisan like Museveni can be, kind of stuff, So, people who are collegiate, people who will bring the country together, people who are basically voices of parents or grandparents of the nation. Kids, come on, kind of stuff. That really is what this thing is all about. But look,
that's what that office of the presidency.
That really was the purpose. And I think it's an absolute lost opportunity in this country. I'm sorry that I have to emphasize it because I think it's generally quite sad. Because this country lost huge opportunities. And for our independence leaders to have thought like that, these guys were visionary.
That's genius.
These guys were visionary. So then number two, what do? Let's give these positions to our cultural leaders. Do you get it?
I get it.
Number two. And then number three came, which one should have it first? Of course, for our cultural leaders, elected on a rotational basis.
Yeah.
So the idea of having which one first
became a problem.
Became, of course, a topical issue. Uganda People's Congress, that some people, in a very cheeky way, like to throw nonsensical, and I've said nonsensical for this important topic and for program.
Yeah, sure.
But I've used it in a very deliberate way. Stones visually simply said, no. We think the cultural leader, the cultural institution that most deserves to take this thing first is the Kingdom of Buganda. It's the largest kingdom,
most powerful,
the most organized, the most powerful. And in any case, symbolical, at 1962, we saw how they struggled, including their king, coming to terms with the reality that for the first time in their lives, there is an African, of course, for them, that's the irony with Africans. The Muzungu or an Asian can come and they call them gods, and the fellow African comes. So there's the first time an African who comes and sort of takes formal etiquette, formal precedent over and above the king. And that's the executive prime minister. Did you get my point?
I get your point.
That is necessary. So UPC leaders recognized it was a difficult thing for the kingdom, but it was an imperative thing. And I think people need to wake up to these realities.
Serious intellectual humility to say that.
So UPC said, no, we will support the king of Buganda. Now, UPC did not support the king of Buganda, since we're discussing Republicanism, Feudalism, did not support the king of Buganda because we had an alliance with them. No. UPC supported the king of Buganda because of the vision, understanding, and commonsensical reality of justice and fairness that prevailed at the time. That the nearest fair person to take that was
would have
Buganda,
to be Kabaka Muteesa II.
Ideally. And in any case, it was an elected position. So we sought to support the Kabaka. Now, we supported the Kabaka against our own.
Who was the deputy president of UPC?
The vice president of Uganda People's Congress, who was the king effectively. Kyabazinga Nadiope, it's the second fairly powerful, identity community in his own right, was our own. And we said, no, let's support the king. Now, Nadiope wasn't happy. We even lost some things there. So Nadiope went on to contest. For the record, Nadiope was supported by DP. And DP up to that time, was predominantly, and still continues predominantly, a Buganda political party. Well, this is a national political party. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, still.
So the DP establishment supported
Kyabazinga
Nadiope for this position. In fact, they had a conference in Barara, for the record. So they had a conference in Barara in which DP was supporting Nadiope. But of course, quite clearly, we had the numbers in Parliament.
So it had to be the Parliament which was to vote to the president.
That's right. So
you outnumbered them.
So Sir Edward won the position of president. UPC has never been credited with this. In any case,
in lieu of the support UPC.
Partly in view of that, but true as from a strategic common sense point of view, including from a scholarly analysis perspective, that look, this is how things should be done. And sometimes life's about give and take. Late Minister Peter Otai told me this in London. He said the UPC youth wing were predominantly furious because the young people radical. So sometimes we can be short-sighted. We want our own kind of stuff.
Principle is principle.
Yeah.
Right?
So Sir Edward became the president from that perspective. And so then after that we had 1962. Then we had 64, the referendum thing, which now brings conflicts between the central government and Buganda.
I was about to ask that question, by the way.
Yes.
How did you guys get to divorce and those conflicts which later emerged with UPC attacking the Lubiri?
UPC didn't attack the Lubiri. In any case, the central government fought with the Lubiri. It was not UPC, but
how did the conflict come about?
I think the bad blood started with the referendum, actually, in 1964. Because
what was the referendum about?
The referendum was about the lost counties in the conflict between Buganda and Bunyoro, which had been ongoing for a very long time. And up to the Lancaster House discussion over the constitution, the lost county had not been resolved. The matter hadn't been resolved, and it was contentious. And it was decided that this matter be left to the the post-independence government, and that it should be settled through a referendum, ideally no later than 2 years after independence. And so once the government was formed in 1962, whoever formed that government was obliged to respect the independence agreement. And the UPC formed that government, and the UPC, could not fall back on the people of Uganda because you want to please a particular group, whoever they are. And the Ugandans need to come to terms. We need to learn, and you young people need to be able to know that once in a while you should be able to say no, including to your own conscience, when the reality is that it's the democratic will of the majority of the people.
Yeah, I get you.
Or else you go ahead and go and break off people's legs in Luweero simply because you've lost election in Barara.
I get you. If I'm to ask, so at independence, as you make the argument and context, UPC supports Uganda. And later on we see the UPC government banning kingdoms. What creates that leap in thought from when you are supporting that the political structure should be not subservient, let's say in terms of obeying authority to a cultural position of the presidency as the ultimate? How do you take that leap from X to Y?
I just need to clear something. We're just an unfortunate reality as a country. We are a country of 4 major kingdoms at the time towards independence, and other smaller kingdoms and republics like Uganda, like Padola. I would be the king of Padola because the powerful fighter there is Anukeo. His mother came from my family, and I'm the family leader for my family. And
you are a king in your own right.
No, but I do not believe in this. And as I said, we're a Republican community as jobs. So we in these days have leaders and chiefs, and people want to claim this thing. I can see sometimes once in a while some people want to walk like some people want to envy Kabaka Muteesa II, and so people walk like that. But no, we're Republican. So it a country crafted out of different identities and different kingdoms, and so. At independence, that was reality. So we needed to be able to decide. So people in Busoga, they need to decide that they're Busoga, but Mulochi may be their king, but they're part of the Republic of Uganda. The people, unfortunately, Buganda, our largest kingdom and largest identity, must recognize that they're part of the Republic of Uganda. So if the people of Uganda want to choose to, in the reality, not to be part of the Republic of Uganda, they will have to persuade the Ugandans so that the CC does the thing they wanted to do. Break up, and then you're a kingdom of your own and a nation state. Unfortunately, that's not, for a progressive political party like me, I don't really believe in that. I believe in one Africa in any case. The largest kingdom in Africa and the most powerful kingdom in Africa and identity are the Zulu.
But they are still within South Africa.
And I don't know when the Zulu have ever sought to claim Pretoria and Johannesburg. So maybe for our friends in Buganda, these are the conversations we need to be able to have. And as I said, what's important, and I'm quite free having this conversation, is that we need to help one another deal with the realities rather than fudging impossible realities. You see?
So the fights between UPC and Uganda emerged from Uganda wanting to break down the Ugandan state as had been formed at the time?
Indeed. But why I give you that background is, as well as independence, UPC recognizes the contradiction of Uganda, the motive element of these things. But what do? You nurse, within reason, rather than prick. But unfortunately, after 1964 rather, Buganda takes a particular line on the lost counties, including taking the results of the referendum badly. But it is not UPC that was voting in this thing. It was Bunyoro, people of the lost counties who voted. So this is a matter between Buganda and Bunyoro. And it had nothing to do with us, the rest of Ugandans. And UPC had a mandate to govern Uganda. Bad blood ensues. In 1965, it is the case that there was evidence that there was an attempted assassination of Prime Minister Milton Obote. And this assassination attempt is linked to the kingdom, to the king. That's a historical fact.
1965.
By 1966, I have friends in the royal family, Buganda royal family, who believe that some of these people, like some of these people who follow Museveni's son, and they call him Deputy Jesus or David, whatever kind of stuff. The guy tell you, some people who were quite convincing to Sir Edward to show him that, look, we can break. I know that there are people who believe that Sir Edward was quite ill-advised between 1965 and 66, including this idea that central government should leave the soul of Buganda.
So UPC was taking on those actions in self-defense, but also in defense of the nascent state of Uganda.
No, it's not self-defense. And Obote doesn't even like that idea, because at no time was he, if it was self-defense, he would have acted in 1965 about his life, but he didn't. He saw it as a national issue. And in 1966, the UPC didn't do it. In 1966, I said the central government did it. So in 1966, when it became apparent that Buganda was preparing for war with central government, and Uganda seemed to know this, 1966 thing was not a matter between Buganda and UPC or Obote. It was between Buganda Kingdom and the central government of Uganda, whoever that leader was. UPC happened to have been government, and UPC was a mandated
So even if UPC was not government, that conflict would have still emerged.
And scholars should not ask that question.
And not impute the issue on Obote. Maybe as we close...
Precisely right, but let me just give a quick answer.
If I can ask, and then you join that answer. And this question, is that okay?
Oh, sure.
So as we close this episode, how do we reclaim the concept of republicanism as being practiced vis-a-vis the concept that UPC was advancing? You can merge it.
I think it's easier today than the contradictions we had in 1966, because I think sort of the foregone conclusion, unless Buganda and any other kingdom is going to seek to claim that the contradictions at the moment are possibly too far. Meaning UPC's, the government, UPC's position in 1967 has been proven right. That there's no other way. But look, so 66.
How, for example, the NRM government treated the rural kingdom when they wanted to
that is criminal, and people should be in Luzira for that.
Okay.
Yeah, people should be in Luzira for that.
UPC was softer on Uganda.
It was not softer. I'll tell you. Because UPC did not attack Mengo. UPC didn't. The government didn't attack Mengo. Government sent police officers, to Mengo, and they were attacked and they were killed. Read Sir Edward's own book, The Discretion of My Kingdom. So it'll tell you that Buganda was armed. So I said, assassination attempt on Milton about 1965. Buganda Kingdom seeking to get arms, buy arms from the British. The British said, no, those are all on the record, on what grounds. And then 3, Lukiko declares central government should leave the soul of Buganda. So what the UPC government was doing was to protect Uganda for all Ugandans. And it's extraordinary that any average Ugandan, particularly, and I think it's a hypocrisy, particularly for non-Buganda, any non-Buganda, it's a hypocrisy to pretend that they're being as Jesus, as the Pope who've just lost, that Mbu is those terrible. No, it was about the Republic of Uganda.
So about the state of Uganda against the kingdom, which...
No, where the kingdom says leave central... So what is going to remain of Uganda? So number one. And then number 2, central government police go on an investigation of arms, and then they're killed. What do you expect? Police reinforcement. And then police reinforcement, these guys are killed. What do you expect? Further reinforcement. The soldiers, meaning Amin, went as a last resort. Amin did not go because it was some Obote's favorite. Obote was a constitutionalist. Obote sends Amin because Amin is the senior army officer, deputy army commander. And you're sending a deputy army commander to the home of the king, who is also the president of the country as of that time. Today, if Museveni has issues on this program of ours where we're telling him that actually Kasese was massacre and it was criminal, Museveni is not going to send a sergeant to me or to Ochieno. Museveni is going to send a senior officer to me.
Yeah, true.
But of course, there's no reason Museveni. please send them to look for thieves who are eating our money.
If you can give the parting shots and we see how to close this conversation.
After 1966, and the contradictions became very clear to the Uganda's political establishment that maintaining the then kingdoms and the powers that they wanted side by side with an independent national government was a contradiction. And so the idea, therefore, that depoliticizing the kingdoms was the right way the right way to go.
Very timely.
Some people have argued that possibly, it was radically too unfair. It's a subject for conversation. If only after this background we can have this debate that, the idea that banned them completely was on the extreme. That's the topic that for me, Ochieno, and including Milton Obote, was willing to discuss because I had a conversation with him. In any case, Obote's only regret.
You had a chat with him on that?
Of course. Obote's only regret, and ask Andrew Mende inclusive, was the outcome of the Lubiri. Was it because it was his responsibility? No. In terms of the outcome of whatever happened, he regrets that. Not because he takes responsibility. Action, not the action, because there was an imperative. And in any case, finally, that happens. The Kabaka is given safe corridor to Burundi. Not that he escaped miraculously, because that's not true. And that the Kabaka finds himself in UK, in exile, imperatively, understandably. The Kabaka dies in exile. We know the Kabaka was not killed. That's a fact. The Kabaka was
died
not
a
killed.
Natural death in exile.
He died a circumstantial death, natural death, but nobody killed the Kabaka. And then after that, of course, the Buganda have a reason to feel that the government that did that was UPC government. But UPC did not design from the beginning. UPC remains today Buganda's best friend politically, if you look from the foundations to where we are at the moment going forward. So finally, I think, I hope that in future, the Republican spirit of 1967, where we see that nobody has got a special status in this country, and that the natural resources of this country are resources for all the people of Uganda. But whereas today, constitutionally, we say that if there is a first amongst equals amongst the Japs, that the leader of the Japadola community, but that does not make him the ruling president of Padola. I respect Kabaka Muteesa. I respect the family members of my friends. And so any kingdom that exists within the Republic of Uganda is fine, and we should support and we should respect them as part of their cultural institution. But politically, the Republic of Uganda must reclaim its space, engage with the other republics on the African continent, so that once again we're able to be powerful enough to ensure that African resources are really, truly for African peoples.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ochieno and Joseph, for giving us that very, very useful context. In the first episode, we had a chat about the Common Man's Charter. We hope you learned quite a lot. We folded into the second on what it means to be a republic, the republicanism spirit that was imbibed by the UPC. We hope you've learned a lot about your political history. Thank you very much. You could find all our content on all our podcasting platforms. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.